Welcome to the first ever episode of the All Ball, No Foul podcast.
I am your host, Alex Grimm, with my co-host, Nick LaVere. And like he said, this is the All Ball, No Foul podcast. And we are going to be bringing you guys every week a episode about basketball in the NBA. And Nick, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so once again, I'm Nick LaVere, and I've been a big basketball fan. Not only I played basketball my whole life, was blessed enough to play at the collegiate level, but, I've always been a big, basketball fan, whether if it's college hoops, NBA hoops, and just always watching as much basketball as I can. And, I think the biggest reason why we wanted to make this podcast is because we see, television shows like First Take, just like SportsCenter, just these debate shows in general now that they just talk about the same topics every single day, whether it's like LeBron James or, Russell Westbrook drama with the Lakers, or they're talking about Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets all the time. And we, as big basketball fans like the both of us are, and love this game so much, we're tired of hearing the same thing on TV every single day. So we want to bring you content to you guys and talk about not just about the game of basketball, but just like strategics of what teams have done, analytics about players, etc.
Yeah, and to go off of that, I have been a longtime basketball fan. Unlike Nick, I did not play at the collegiate level, but I have played basketball for a long time now, since probably like around the beginning of high school, and have really started to follow the game more over the years. And again, to just piggyback off of what he was talking about is that, we want to give you guys a different perspective, a different take on basketball, not just the same old tired narratives that you hear every day on any talk show. You go on Fox, you go on ESPN, obviously all the other big media outlets and stuff are going to talk about the things that you're going to hear so many times. So what we want to do is give you those perspectives, those takes, and kind of the analysis of the game for maybe some topics you think about, but you don't hear about. So we want to try and give that to give people a different take on basketball, and just so we're giving you something new to listen to.
Absolutely.
So Nick, I do want to say our first topic that we are going to go over today is going to be the recap of the NBA 2021-2022 season. Your biggest takeaways from that season, biggest surprises, biggest disappointments, and we'll talk a little bit about the playoffs afterwards. So Nick, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so obviously the biggest takeaways are two teams that made it to the finals that a lot of people were very surprised about, because obviously the disappointments were the Lakers, and the Nets. Everyone thought with all those offseason moves that they made and how they looked on paper, that those two teams were going to end up being in the finals, but that was not the case. A team like the Boston Celtics that were 3 games under 500 in the first, 12, 15 games maybe into the season.
Yeah.
And the front office and, people in the media were talking, should they split up Tatum and Brown?
Yeah.
And that was such a huge topic, especially at the beginning and the middle of the season. But, they changed their philosophy of their team. They became like a defensive-minded team. And, look what happened. They made it all the way to the finals. They were able to get things figured out. Especially when Marcus Smart had those comments. I don't know if you remember talking about how, they're playing too much isolation ball. The ball's always going into Tatum and Brown's hands. And the rest of the guys are just standing around, just letting them try to create something, and I think that really lit a spark up. Of course, it's not always good, to call out people, but I personally believe that really helped the team out in the long run, and it did, because they made it all the way to the finals.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the Celtics definitely were the biggest surprise of the year, not because of necessarily the Celtics weren't a playoff team. I think it's just that nobody expected Boston to be in the finals, especially with the roster they had. And I know that, bringing guys back like Al Horford, I mean, that was a huge thing. Al Horford was the glue of that team during the Isaiah Thomas era.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously,
Avery Bradley.
Yes, Avery Bradley, Jay Crowder, Marcus Morris.
Oh, yeah.
Those teams, Al Horford was really, I feel like, on the downstretch of his career, comes back and then really proves himself in the playoffs too. I would say, like, I was very shocked at how well he was playing, especially at his age. And it just, I don't know where these guys are coming with this fountain of youth from, but it just seems like more guys are keeping themselves in shape at an older age and still playing at a very high level. And I don't feel like we've seen that a lot of recently, but it's really cool to see. I'd also say too is that I know that you already harped on the Lakers and the Nets. I think that those were, like those are like the, the big ones. LeBron, it's championship or bust with him every year. Mm-hmm. We know that 80's knees they're not really good. Unfortunately, I think he's really only played, I think, 60 plus games a couple times in the last couple of years. And Westbrook, the experiment, that
just did not work at all. Especially. It's not that didn't work out. It's who they traded to get him.
Yeah.
I feel like they traded away their defensive and perimeter shooters.
Oh, yeah.
Kuzma and KCP, those were their perimeter shooters. Mm-hmm. And you get rid of those guys for somebody who literally cannot shoot a basketball to save his life currently still. So, it's just...
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is with them. And obviously, like that trade is going to go down as something that, if you could take it back, you would. You trade for Buddy Hield in that situation, and things are probably looking a lot different right now. But thank you, because that is going to give us one of our biggest surprises of the year. And I know that the media does not like the Chicago Bulls, and I know Nick and I being from the Chicago area, being Bulls fans, it might seem a little biased for us to say this, but I still think that it was surprising to see how well they were playing before the injuries really started taking down their team.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, as soon as they signed DeMar DeRozan, you hear some experts say that was the most overrated signing in the offseason, and it's crazy that a lot, like on paper, when you looked at it, you have Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic, and we get Caruso, and we get guys like Derrick Jones and these guys.
Yeah.
And then, you still got Patrick Williams, you still got Kobe White, you still got some young talent that we've had during our rebuilding phases. But then they're like, this team might make the play-in if they're lucky. It's like, what?
Yeah, I was really surprised.
Crazy as a Bulls fan.
I remember because there was multiple people definitely saying, like, how is DeMar going to work with Zach? Obviously, Zach is a ball-heavy volume shooter that is going to take, 20-plus shots a game, and DeMar is a mid-range guy, and the mid-range game is, a lot of experts like to say, is dying. It's a dying art, and people don't do it. But I think two guys that have really shown that the mid-range game still really can be effective in this day and age is Chris Paul and DeMar. And I think DeMar had one of his best seasons, if not his best last year, in Chicago, and he deserved all the praise. And you know what? I'm glad that he came to Chicago. So thank you, LeBron, for begging for Russell Westbrook. I will say that. I will say that right now. And that kind of leads us to, I think, to talk about a little bit about the finals and the playoffs. So I think, Nick, in terms of like the playoffs, what matchup did you really feel like intrigued you the most?
Honestly, during the playoffs, it was the finals. Especially going into the playoffs. I had Golden State making it out of the West once the playoff structure was set.
Yeah.
And with Boston, for me, it was either Boston or Milwaukee. Whoever won that series, I feel like Brooklyn was just too late to get something going.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with Kyrie missing all those games, with all the drama with the media brought towards Brooklyn with the whole vaccination status of Kyrie. And obviously they had James Harden, and James Harden goes, I had enough of this. I came here to play with these guys. Now they're not even available. Mm-hmm. So he jumped ship.
Yeah.
And Steve Nash, guy that gets a coaching job. He's never coached in any level in his career, But the most intriguing part to me was the finals because of the matchup. Going before the playoffs started, as you see the seedings were officially set. I felt like Golden State was going to make it to the finals, and then going into the East, you're looking at the bracket, and I'm thinking, okay, as much of a Bulls fan I am, I just did not see us beating the Milwaukee Bucks in a 7-game series. And then, with Boston and Brooklyn, Brooklyn, it was just too late, to really get something going. And I am really shocked they got swept. I'll say that much, especially game 1, Kyrie blowing a Simon Tatum layup to win the game. All those games were very tight, and Boston just won all 4 of them, which is kind of surprising because Boston was a team that they're actually they were one of the worst teams of the league in crunch time.
Yeah, and I think one of the other interesting parts too is that Boston made it to the finals without a true point guard. Like, I know that Marcus Smart is a point guard, but you really saw, and I know that this is something
especially in that series in the finals.
Yeah, and like in the finals, you really saw that get exposed because Tatum was bad. I mean, there's no way I can really put it in a nice way to say that Tatum had one of the worst series of his career. He struggled from the floor, couldn't find a shot. A lot of times, and one of the biggest things that I felt in Game 6 was that you have Jaylen Brown, who was the best player in that series for Boston.
He would have been Finals MVP.
Oh, 100%. And it was crazy when I was watching the second half of that game. They kept trying to force feed the ball to Tatum, and he was getting doubled. Like, he was on the block, and I remember there was this play where Draymond is on him, and, Brown had their, last 6 points, and they decided to give the ball to Tatum, which made no sense.
Yeah.
Because he was struggling so bad, and I understand, he's the best player on your team. You want to give him the ball, see what he can do, but I just felt that coupled with Marcus Smart just not being a playmaker for others just really hurt them in that series against Golden State. Golden State knew that they didn't have to worry about Smart, and the only guys they had to focus on was Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, what was really interesting to me is, Tatum had a really tough time dealing with the double team. He was turning over the ball a lot. But not only that, he had a lot of situations where he got the ball, at the elbow or on the block. He's posting up, smaller defenders, but he's just settling for jump shots, especially. I think he actually had a better percentage from 3 than 2 in the finals.
I believe so.
Yeah, he was struggling. Like, there were some games too. I forgot which game it was, but didn't he have 4 or 5 threes early in one of the finals games? Like, he was really hitting on threes, but he couldn't hit his mid-range jumpers. And I get it. He's trying to be kind of like KD. He could just shoot over anybody with that length that Tatum has. And a lot of the guys that were guarding, Tatum were like Gary Payne.
Yeah.
Those guys that are really, short, he has 5-6 inches on it, but he was just settling for the jump shot, taking it, making the defender, not really have to guard.
No, and I mean, that is something, too, that I feel like Golden State had the personnel in order to really make it a hard matchup for Boston. I feel like, too, another interesting thing is Grant Williams was one of those impact players. He really started to show in the second half of the season how valuable he can be, and obviously getting huge minutes in the finals. I felt like for him too, he struggled in times in that series, and I think one of the biggest things too is that this finals for Steph, I think that this was finally that I've made it over the mountaintop, 2016 LeBron when he the 3-1 comeback. That chip will always mean the most. As he said, he literally said in a report or in an interview last week, I think he said, where he said that he will value that ring over the 2 rings he won with KD, because obviously he was the main focal point. Those 30 points that he was averaging, or close to averaging, I believe, was, that was him. He was the reason they were there, and he brought home in Game 6. You knew in that second half.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially, in past finals, there might have been games that Steph still had 30, but there might have been a quarter and a half where he didn't score a single point. I think throughout this finals, there wasn't that many spurts where he wasn't really scoring. I think he was always consistently, scoring. Especially people are forgetting that how big Andrew Wiggins was in that series.
Yeah.
Not only offensively, he was very efficient. He was in his perimeter shots. He was able to get to the paint. but defensively, when he was one-on-one with either Brown or Tatum, I mean, he was unbelievable.
Oh yeah, and I think one of the craziest things is that we always look at Andrew Wiggins as the number one overall pick, playing his first couple of years in Minnesota, being a guy that was getting you around 18 a game, for his first couple of years of his career, not being this star like when he was coming out of college, they were claiming him the next LeBron. But I feel like we say that so much all the time with these like top prospects, next big thing. Wiggins has really found a home in Golden State.
Yeah, I think he found the perfect role for him.
Yeah.
Especially I just always knew, well, especially after the first couple of years, he would never be a first or second best player on a championship caliber team.
Yeah.
But with him at Golden State, they got Steph. They got Clay.
Yeah.
They got Jordan Poole. And Draymond, I know he doesn't score a lot. He's terrible from the 3-point line. I get it, but his energy and his leadership on the floor.
Yeah.
And then there's people just all suddenly just was forgetting about Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah, and I mean Andrew, and like to talk a little bit more about Wiggins. I think the craziest thing is that his defense is so underrated, and I don't really feel like people noticed that until this year, especially like him playing on Tatum in the finals. That was huge. I feel like obviously Steph was the best player, but without Wiggins, they might not win that series just based off their personnel, because I don't feel like anybody else on that team is strong defensively to guard a guy like that. Clay was coming off the 2 massive injuries.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the same Clay that he once was. He's, maybe like 70% of Clay now, but having a guy like Wiggins, that trade, I know that, it's so funny because, with the big media, they always talked about how that trade was never going to make sense for Golden State. Why would you trade for Wiggins?
Yeah.
Look what happened.
Look what happened. And especially about, Klay Thompson, he really struggled the first 2 games in the finals.
Yeah.
Especially, now we're bringing up that if it was like Wiggins, if he didn't play the way that he played.
Yeah.
Obviously, Draymond was receiving a lot, for being absolutely terrible, not really looking at the rim at all.
Yeah.
But no, this was Steph's moment, and Steph took full advantage of it. Especially, Marcus Smart was Defensive Player of the Year, and on most plays, Marcus Smart is on Steph. Now, I know we're going to talk about a little bit how I feel like Boston's as good as they were defensively, but I think their defensive strategy throughout this entire finals was terrible. I feel like there was no adjustments whatsoever. They were just switching every ball screen. Like, if I have the Defensive Player of the Year on my team, and they have a player that is as good as Steph Curry, one of the best, offensive players in this generation, but of all time as well. Because you got to pick him up from half court, because the guy can shoot it from everywhere, and he can shoot off the dribble. He's got a hand, one of the best hands in the league. Like, there's just nothing you could do to contain him. So if I was the coach, I would want my best perimeter defender on him as much as possible. I get it, Golden State likes to run a lot of pick and rolls, but it's like Robert Williams and Al Horford just were not getting up, and I just don't understand how they keep continually letting it happen game after game after game. I just don't understand how, as good of a defensive-minded coach Udoka is, how there was just no adjustments at all.
Yeah, and I think one of the most crucial things too is that, like you said, you didn't have Marcus Smart, who won Defensive Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing is that they weren't even like getting over the screen. You knew what was going to happen. So I feel like, and obviously it was a different situation a couple of years ago when they played against the Raptors in the finals. Nick Nurse was playing box in the 1 because they had nobody else to shoot. But at the same time, is like you have to pressure Steph to get the ball out of his hands.
Yes.
If you're going to play him one-on-one with a big man, you're going to lose. And one of the most, I would say, even annoying things is that Boston has guys that can play one-on-one defense.
Yes, they got a lot of them.
And it's crazy. You have Derek White, you have Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Grant Williams, and, you're playing guys like Al Horford and Robert Williams, like you said, on him. And, like in Game 6, Boston had chances to come back in that game, but again, the matchup and the defensive strategy was their downfalling, and that is, again, it's one of the biggest things that we could keep saying for this. So I feel like it's just kind of one of those things that we'll see if there's, of how people are going to guard Golden State again. Because, again, I feel like they were kind of forgotten about a little bit just based off of the last couple of years without KD, the injuries, everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
How are people going to treat them this year? And I think that gets us to our next point is the NBA offseason. Nick, I know that something that's happened in the last couple of weeks have been a lot of Donovan Mitchell things, but can we just talk about this?
Oh, yeah.
Utah, who had Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, have now accumulated multiple assets, 7 first-round draft picks. And Danny Ainge is looking like he's trying to recreate what he did in Boston all over again.
Yeah, with that Brooklyn. It's very interesting now. And, with now teams are starting to see what Sam Presti has done, how good of a league executive he is, getting all these young talent players all the time. Look at what he got from Paul George.
Oh, yeah.
For example, that was
6 first-round picks.
Insane. It's Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, that boy can ball.
Yeah.
And he's always able to draft good. He drafted Westbrook, drafted KD, got Harden, got all these guys. Yeah. He somehow knows how to find the talent. And I think with Utah, they realized, even with having Mitchell and Gobert, they would keep making the playoffs every year, but the same thing would have kept happening to them. The game, slows down more, and, there's so many great guards in the West, and they exploit Rudy Gobert.
Yeah,
put them in pick and rolls, and they're switching everything. Like, Rudy Gobert is probably the best rim protector in the league.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
When you put him on an island out there with a lot of these guys, they were just getting torched. They were leaving guys open for corner threes all the time, and they just it's kind of hard because a lot of people are like, maybe you should take him off the floor, but it's kind of hard to take the defensive player of the year off the floor.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things with Rudy is he can move. So it's not like, okay, he looks like like a lost dog out there where he can't move at all.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest problems is that he was he's a help defender, so he can obviously irritate a shot, but you can't expect him to be out there on the perimeter trying to guard guys like Steph or Luka, or really any, the top guards in the league. And I think one of the other things, too, is that people don't mention enough is that it just kind of seemed like Donovan just at times didn't want to play defense. And I feel like the other problem with Rudy is he is really a one-dimensional player. I feel like Rudy and the amount of assets that Minnesota gave up to get him, it just feels like it's... I don't know. It's just I don't feel like he's worth that much.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No. What's really interesting, going back on Utah real quick with Danny Ainge, a lot of teams now you see you're either going to go for it, or you're going to rebuild. Yeah. Because when you look at a couple years ago, Kawhi gets traded to Toronto.
Yeah.
Toronto, gave up DeMar DeRozan. San Antonio got an all-star caliber player, but they didn't get them nowhere. I mean, they made the playoffs, but they got bounced in the first round and stuff. Now teams are starting to realize now, if we're trading that star level-ish player or any all-star caliber player, they're just going to go for the young talent now. They're going to go for the draft picks. They're not really going to go for, a guy that might be an all-star or something like that now, because even if they get that very good player, but they're still going to struggle regardless.
Oh yeah, and I would even say with even Donovan Mitchell, I think Donovan Mitchell is if I was going to say a star player, he's a 1B, he's kind of teetering on the 2A, 1B line of where he's good and he can definitely impact a team in a positive direction, but he doesn't put you over the top. He's not a superstar. There's I think a lot of people say, there's only a handful of guys that can really change a team. They're so I can't think of the word right now, but polarizing. Yeah. So Donovan is not polarizing, but he can definitely help your team be a playoff team.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. And I think Cleveland, I know that they missed the playoffs because of the play-in, but that team is really good. And I would not have expected Cleveland of all places, I thought Knicks. I thought for after they got Brunson, Mitchell was there.
That's all they were, talking about, with all the Knicks have 8 first-round picks. Or they could give up top and they could give up quickly. They could give up R.J. Barrett. Yeah. They got a lot of, they had all the young assets that any executive would want. They're trading a star player like that, and you look at 8 first-round picks and you go, well, we just got 5 for Rudy Gobert. Yeah. We could get 5 more and we could possibly get R.J. Barrett and, whoever. Like, that's insane. But with Minnesota, it's very interesting. Yes, they did give up a lot. Oh, yeah. But they're tired of not getting players in the offseason to come play in Minnesota. So they felt like to form a big three, they had to make this move. Yeah. It's going to be really interesting now with Karl-Anthony Towns and Gobert on the floor together, because that's going to be a team that's going to they're going to win about 50 regular season games. Yeah. They're going to definitely avoid the play-in. I think they're a top 6 team in the West. 100%. But when it comes to the playoffs and, the game slows down more, you're playing teams that got a lot of guards and, pick and roll. It's like run every single play in the NBA now. Yeah. It's not really a lot of set plays in the NBA. It's not college. You're running a lot of pick and roll stuff. Yeah. And you're going to put Rudy Gobert on an island again?
And Cat's not a defender either. No. So this reminds me of when Al Horford went to Philly. Like, it's just giving me those vibes of when they tried to put Embiid and Horford together and how that did not work whatsoever. I'm not saying it's going to be this because, again, those 2 players, their style of play is a lot different. But I can see the same problem happening. You're going to try and put Rudy and Cat in, and then you're going to have the lane clogged. I know that Cat, can shoot the 3, but do you expect Cat to be at the top of the key every time? Because it's like you're not going to put both of them down there in the paint. And especially in the playoffs, you're going to they're going to force Rudy to try and be the one to beat you, because that's like one of the things that I could see, and that's his biggest struggle. He cannot play. This is why he gets played off too, not just because of his being on an island, like you said, with pick and rolls and stuff, but also his lack of offensive game. I mean, he's basically a guy that really just gets his points based off of putbacks from rebounds or lob passes, and that's not going to win you a championship, which is why I'm glad that he didn't get traded to Chicago.
Yeah, I'm glad because, a lot of the rumors were like, if the Bulls were going to trade for Rudy Gobert, it'd be Patrick Williams would be, the guy. And, I just think, as a Bulls fan, Patrick Williams has got a lot of talent. And I understand people are like, well, we've given him, a few seasons already. He really hasn't shown much. Yeah. Well, it's kind of hard when you're playing on a team where you have 3 guys that are taking about 70% of the team's shots.
That's true.
And then you really got to see, especially in the late stages of the season, where some guys started to get hurt, and you really saw some spurts of Patrick Williams. And, I'm telling you, Patrick Williams, Bulls fans, relax. This kid's only 21 years old. Yeah. I mean, it's insane what he's shown already. And defensively, he's very good defensively too. So I'm very excited for Patrick Williams' future with the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, many Kawhi, as he's been said, because of how big his hands are. I think one of the things that we do a lot as like NBA fans is if a guy isn't doing things that like we deem as like, oh, this is what your value is supposed to be as a draft pick, sometimes they don't show up on a stat sheet. And I feel like a lot of fans have become box score fans where they're not really looking at the game and their impact. So Pat Williams is usually guarding the best player on the other team, because again, guys like LaVine and DeMar are not really defensive-minded players. They're more focusing on the offensive side of the ball. Vooch has never really been known for his defense either. Again, so you don't have guys that are huge defensive-minded guys. Yeah. So you have to think
especially in the starting lineup besides Lonzo Ball. Yeah. They got some guys off the bench that can really defend. Caruso. I love Ayo too. Grant, Derrick Jones. They got a lot of energy guys, but those guys are off the bench. When we talk about the starting unit, besides Lonzo's obviously guarding the best guard, but when it comes to forwardish, Patrick Williams. That's Patrick Williams' assignment, no matter who it is. Yeah.
KD, Kawhi, LeBron. He's going to guard all your top forwards out there. And I mean, even to get even past that, and talk a little bit more about this off season too. I would want to say is that some of the other big things, I think, was a lot of the rumors. I know we were talking about how, like, the trade market with Rudy and Donovan, but it's crazy because after that Rudy trade happened, and remember, KD said, I want out.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine how much you would have had to truly, like, give up to get Kevin Durant? I mean, they were asking for, like, 2 all-star players, like multiple draft picks. Basically, gut half your team. You can have a 34-year-old Kevin Durant coming off a couple injuries and not necessarily going to win you a championship because you just gutted half your team.
I think and then he finally, realized that if he gets traded to a team, whatever team he went to, that roster's completely devastated because they use all their assets and maybe an all-star caliber player.
Yeah.
Just to get you on the team.
Oh, yeah.
So then you realize, well, I'm here now, in Brooklyn. I got Kyrie.
Mm-hmm.
People are forgetting about Ben Simmons. We'll see how that works out in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of shooters, and stuff. He goes, I might as well just see how this goes.
Yeah. I mean, and it's kind of ironic too because I think one of the things that we kept seeing, every day was, is Russell Westbrook going to get traded? Is Kyrie Irving going to get the trade that he wanted? Is Kevin Durant going to finally get out? And I felt like for like 3 to 4 weeks, I was like, I'm looking at Twitter, and I feel like Twitter has become like that huge like source of like where everybody gets their sports news.
Yep.
Because you have guys like Shams, you have Woj, and then you have like a couple other like beat writers or like people that have like good sources and stuff. And it's like once you see that, you're just kind of like, okay, that's where all the attention goes.
Yeah, it's like they're assuming that they're always going to be 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean they don't know. They're getting information that us fans are not getting behind the scenes. So, of course, they know a lot more than us, but that doesn't mean whatever a report's getting put out there that it's going to be 100% the outcome.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's I think that's a huge thing with, like, today's, like, NBAs is that the impact of social media, you see, like, guys, I mean, like, look at Pat Bev, like, how much he's talked since he got traded to, the Lakers, and I think, like, that's something that we see. Obviously, you've seen other players, make responses to things that have been said about them.
Yep.
And I think it's just kind of like, it's crazy to really see the impact of what this is doing and how it's going to change, I think the next, like, generation of players that are kind of come in. Because you see the older guys don't really talk too much on social media, but you're going to see the younger guys, they're going to, like, Ja Morant, definitely.
The Grizzlies in general, man, they want all the smoke with Golden State, bro. And Golden State was a team like Draymond, he always talked the big game, and now we get to see that Christmas matchup. I'm really hyped for that one.
I'm excited.
And for that rivalry in general. I feel like that's going to be like the new rivalry now in the NBA.
Yeah.
With Golden State, it looks like they're going to keep their team intact for, they did lose some pieces in the offseason, but their main core guys are going to be there for a while. And Memphis is a ascending, team. They keep getting better and better every year.
Yeah.
And it's that's going to be a very good, matchups in the future for this team.
Definitely. And I mean, like, that kind of gets us to our next topic, and then talking about, like, the 2022-2023 season and, our expectations, what do we expect for this season? Like you said, the Christmas Day matchup. And I think it doesn't go without saying is that I think Memphis is going to be one of those top teams for years to come. They have such a young team: Desmond Bane, Jarrett Jackson Jr., Ja Morant.
Yeah.
You obviously have Steven Adams was a great addition last year. Gives you that that toughness inside. Can rebound the ball.
Yes.
The defense.
My only concern is when it's their turn to get paid. Is Memphis going to have the cap for them? Or are those guys get to go where the money is, where the money takes them? So it's just depending on the player. But don't get me wrong, Memphis has a great roster, from top to bottom right now, and they're a really exciting team. And unfortunately, obviously, Ja Morant, got hurt in that series against Golden State. But people forget, like, in the regular season, Ja Morant missed like 20-some games, and Memphis had a very good record without Ja. Don't get me wrong, they're much better with Ja Morant on the floor. I mean, the guy is an all-role player, but that's just how good Memphis is. Especially if a guy or two gets hurt in the middle of the season, they still got enough talent on their team to find ways to win ball games in the regular season to get them
100%.
Probably a top 4 seed in the West.
I think, and I mean, last year they were the 2 seed, so I mean, you know, you can imagine, and obviously, I think, and this is one thing I want to say because you know, talking about the expectations and stuff of this year, I think one of the crazy things is like the Suns, right? They were the 1 seed last year, and Nick, are we gonna start calling CP3 Christopher because you know, I mean, it sucks, but you know, another year wasted, and it just kind of felt like that when they started that math series, seemed like they were gonna win that, and then as Lucas said, people act tough when they're up. And you saw that blowout in Game 7, and the meme of Chris Paul hitting a 3 and you're still down 42 is just that's going to live rent free in somebody's head.
Yeah, I just feel like unfortunately for Phoenix, as presently constructed with this team, I think their championship window is officially closed. I think there's too much talent in the West now. I think a lot of teams have gotten better. You know, Clippers, if they stay healthy, I don't think Phoenix can beat them. I don't think Phoenix they won't be Golden State.
No.
I think Memphis is better. You know, Denver with Murray and Porter, they're healthy. And some of the offseason moves they made with KCP,
Denver.
Jeff Green, I like Denver personally better than Phoenix too. And Minnesota, we'll see if this big 3 works out, you know, because that big 3, you know, on paper looks really good, but let's just see how it works together on the floor. But it's just like these teams in the West, you know, they're getting good.
Oh,
you know? And Phoenix, of course, they're still going to be a very good team. You know, they got a coach of the year, Monty Williams. They still got CP. They still got D-Book. They still got Ain. They still got Bridges. They still got Cam Johnson. They still got a lot of guys, Cameron Payne. You know, they're still going to win a ton of games in the regular season. But I think when it just comes to the playoffs where teams could actually just focus on Phoenix throughout that entire series alone, I think what happened to them last year with the whole Dallas thing is going to exactly happen to them again this upcoming season.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like one of the biggest things that, you know, we're not talking about with Phoenix is also they lost a guy like JaVale McGee, obviously, that was big because I think one of the things that they struggled with in the 2021 finals was you know, they just didn't have the size to, you know, stop Giannis, Brooke, Bobby in the paint, and
they just put Ain on an island with them, like he would be able to hold his own.
Yeah, and I think another crazy thing is because of, again, the impact of the Kevin Durant, all that stuff. You know, Aiden wasn't getting signed because they were holding out hope we can get Kevin Durant, and you know, they ended up signing him because they weren't going to lose him for nothing. So they matched the offer sheet from Indiana, bring Aiden back. You know, Aiden's a disgruntled player right now from the looks of it and how we've heard of everything. You know, I don't know how good this team is. I still think they're a 50-plus win team. Just, you know, you have Chris Paul, Devin Booker. If Chris Paul's still playing at the level he was before.
They still got a lot of good guys. And they still got a pretty solid bench, too. What's really interesting for Phoenix, I think, you know, the most important thing is they need to redevelop their relationship with DeAndre Ain and Monty Williams. Because all those reports came out after they lost, and Ain didn't play really in the second half, and some must have happened in the locker room. They benched him. And I heard a lot of the reports came out saying that, you know, there was a lot of screaming and shouting matches between one another. And, you know, I think DeAndre Ain, you know, he's starting to get a little frustrated how he's just not getting the ball. Because before Chris Paul arrived, the guy was averaging 20 and 10 with Phoenix. And I understand, you know, you're adding a guy like, you know, CP3, you know, obviously your chances offensively, you know, scoring-wise is going to dip a little bit. I get that. But I just felt like, you know, they just couldn't figure out ways to get him involved in the game offensively.
No, I feel like one of the issues too right now with Phoenix is that I feel like they peaked. And I just don't really see, obviously, you know, Chris Paul, he's a mastermind. You know, like he's going to get Aiden, you know, in that pick and roll. Aiden's going to get that easy little floater, you know, over the middle. And Aiden can shoot too. I really feel like they don't, I just feel like it's like they already, like, that team has been figured out. Like, you know how to game plan against them. And Devin Booker obviously is a bucket. You know, he's going to get his. But I think one of the biggest things is that man struggled when it really came down to it.
Yeah.
You know, in Game 7, he didn't show up. And you know, we can talk about excuses and everything about, like, injuries. And I think it's really, you know, unfair to say, because it's like we could use that in every situation. You know, with Denver obviously getting back Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., you know, with the ACL in the back, you know, the Clippers getting back Kawhi Leonard from the ACL and bringing in a guy like John Wall. I mean, I'm scared of the Clippers. The Clippers are my early season favorites to make it out of the West because of everything they have on that team.
No, I agree. And, you know, to be honest with you, when you look at every roster from top to bottom right now, as presently constructed, hypothetically speaking, if every team is healthy, the Clippers have the best roster in the NBA, and I don't think it's that close, to be honest with you, from top to bottom.
No, it is. If we just run it down real quick, you got Kawhi, you have Paul George, you have guys like Robert Covington and Norman Powell you added in the deadline last season. Those are huge ones. You also have guys like Terrence Mann, Reggie Jackson, you got John Wall now, Nicholas Batum, Luke Kennard. Obviously, you brought back Zubac on that deal. That team has, you know, like 5 or 6 guys that are like, you could potentially have your, like, first or second best player being guarded by one of those guys on the floor. That's just how deep they are in terms of perimeter defense.
Especially, you know, John Wall, I think when he signed with the Clippers, he goes, the third best defender is going to be guarding me now.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary.
You know, it's scary. It is scary to really think about that.
No, I mean, it's going to be scary hours definitely in LA. I think it's going to be really interesting to see the Clippers. I know that, you know, the last couple of years, ever since Kawhi and Paul George came down there, you know, the first year the expectation was they're going to win the championship. Obviously, the Lakers won in the 2020 bubble. The year after,
collapse.
Yeah, the bubble collapse against Denver. And, you know, that's going to be a huge thing still. They don't have size. I mean, outside of Zubac, you don't have any size on that team.
But I feel like, you know, when it gets down to the middle of the season, those buyouts, those potential buyouts, I think the Clippers will fill that role. They got an owner that's going to spend as much money as possible. They just
got that money
just to, you know, put it on the winter championship. You know, especially, you know, the Clippers franchise. Obviously, they've suffered.
Yeah, they've suffered a lot. Unfortunately, a couple 3-1 collapses in the past, you know, 7 years. That's been tough for that team. And I would also say too is that, you know,
they got one of the best coaches in the league.
I love
you know,
Tyronn Lue. Tyronn Lue is, I feel like, you know, he doesn't, I think he's finally gotten that appreciation more. I think the biggest problem is that when you play with LeBron, everybody's underneath LeBron's shadow.
Yeah.
You don't get talked about as much until you're out of LeBron's shadow. And I think people really see now, you know, Tyronn Lue is a good coach. I think that it's just
one of the best coaches in the league.
Yeah. And, you know, and to even jump off of that is funny because, you know, the next team I did want to talk about was the Sixers, you know, like going into the season with the Clippers' former coach, Doc Rivers, you know. I am amazed, you know, that he still has a job. I'm not going to lie. I am very surprised that he's still the coach given everything that's been happening. And I would say, too, their team is not bad this year. So they really have to take advantage. I mean, getting a guy like PJ Tucker with the mid-level exception. They just signed Montrezl Harrell. A full year with James Harden. I don't expect him to be the Houston James Harden that we remember, you know, cooking. But if he can at least average 20, 10, and, you know, a couple boards a game, that's going to help them tremendously.
It's definitely possible too, and, you know, a lot of people didn't want to bring this up, but, you know, James Harden took somewhat of a pay cut. You know, he could have bought in to that 1 year of, what was it, $47 million or whatever it was.
Yeah,
but
a lot.
And he took, like, I don't know how much millions of dollars less just for them to be able to get PJ Tucker. You know, now, and James Harden's really, you know, working hard. You know, he's looking like he's in good shape now. According to his off-season, you know, videos and workouts that I've seen, you know, he's looking like he was, like, in shape like how he was in the beginning of his, you know, Houston ages. I'm not saying he's going to be the Houston of James Harden. I don't expect that at all. But just like you said, there's no doubt in my mind that this guy can still put up 20 to 23 points a game with 10 to 12 assists and 6-ish rebounds a night.
Yeah, and I I mean, there's
he's still one of those guys too that can get to the free throw line with such ease. I know they changed the rules a little bit. He started to get a little frustrated, during the season. We all saw that, but he still is a guy that's going to be top 3 in the league in free throw attempts. Yeah. Without a doubt.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And another guy that actually struggled a little bit with that rule change is Trae Young.
Oh, yeah.
And Atlanta, obviously getting DeJounte Murray, I think that's it's not an underrated move, but I think that, that pairing is going to be really interesting to see. I think that now with the Donovan Mitchell trade, it just kind of now it just kind of doesn't seem like it was as impactful just because of how strong the East is. We've been talking about the East for the last 10, 15, 20 years, this weak conference that it was just LeBron and no one else, and you have to go through LeBron, and now the East, the last since LeBron has left, really, it's just kind of been wide open, and teams have gotten stronger. I feel like Atlanta's top heavy, but I mean, how do you feel with DeJounte Murray now being paired along with Trae?
I think it's going to be a great pairing, especially. I think anytime a front office executive makes a move to make the star happy, Trae Young was preaching, we need to get this guy.
Yeah.
And they did everything they could. Yeah, they gave up, what was it, 3 firsts?
3 firsts, and then I believe they also had to package Kevin Huerter and a couple other pieces, I believe. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's you're going to do that trade 10 out of 10 times.
It's not just also, they still got Jock Towns, which that was another player I was talking about a lot that Atlanta was supposed to move on from, but they didn't. Yeah. You still have Clint Capella. You still got
DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah. That's another guy too. Yeah. So, they got on paper they look really nice too, and obviously they were one of the biggest disappointments from last season. Especially coming from the previous year, making it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yep.
Which obviously that was something that no one ever expected. Everyone thought that they had no chance against Philly that year.
No, I remember that.
Nobody gave them a lick of hope, and they made it all the way to conference finals, and they pretty much brought the same team back, and they just didn't have that year that everyone thought that they were going to make that leap, but they didn't.
And I mean it's crazy too when you think about it. You were in the East Conference Finals. Trae Young putting on a masterpiece. 46-point game. I think he had one of the best playoff runs last year. I think the silencing Madison Square Garden. Obviously the upset over Philly with Ben. Obviously Ben Simmons is going to be the biggest meme of that series. With the don't go up for the layup. And I think even to go off of that, Milwaukee. They played Milwaukee. Milwaukee ended up winning the chip. And I think that doesn't go talked about enough, that I think Milwaukee is still the favorite in the East based off of their roster. Mm-hmm. But I think it's also because we didn't see Chris Middleton in the playoffs.
No, he got hurt early in that first round series against the Bulls. And the fact that, Giannis, wouldn't say he was on his own, Jrue Holiday played a huge part. Bobby Portis played a huge part. To be able to keep him.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought he was gone, and the fact that Milwaukee figured out a way to keep Bobby Portis, they got a lot of guys that could shoot.
Joe Ingles was
that's an underrated sign there.
People
they still got Pat Connaughton's still there, and I know Grayson Allen struggled a lot in that second round series, but dude, he killed our Bulls, bro. That was tough to watch.
I'm not gonna lie. Grayson Allen was the most hated person in Chicago after the Caruso injury, but the way he cooked us in Chicago, after the first 2 games, the guy was non-existent. Then all of a sudden, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm in Chicago. Let's go."
And Brook Lopez is still a pretty good player. He's a good rim protector, and he can stretch the floor out and knock down threes.
Yeah, and people forget Serge Ibaka is on that team. I know he doesn't play any minutes, but if they somehow integrate him into this offense, he can be if they really want to play smaller, put Brook on the bench, you can have that. You would have that ability to have Bobby in the starting and then Serge off the bench if you wanted to do that. So I think that team.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially they went all the way to 7 games with Boston without their all-star Chris Middleton.
Yeah.
Because if you flip the roles and Chris Middleton was there and Boston didn't have Jaylen Brown, Boston ain't beating Milwaukee.
No, they're not. They're not beating Milwaukee, and I think that Drew Holiday, is another guy too on that team that I feel like, and that's crazy to say, but I feel like he's so underrated. I don't think
underrated.
I don't think people talk enough about the two biggest plays in last year's finals, and I'm not talking about the Warriors, but 2 seasons ago now, but. Yes. That Suns and Bucks series, I think it was Game 4 and Game 5, and it was almost this identical play. The first time I believe it was on Chris Paul, the second time it was on Devin Booker, and it was a steal with under a minute left for a transition bucket at the other end. Yeah. And, without those 2 plays, Milwaukee probably doesn't win that series. And it just kind of is like those things you just don't see on a stat sheet because it doesn't say points or rebounds. Yeah. But it's one of the biggest things that happens in that series.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Drew Holiday is a top 3 guard defender in the game. Mm-hmm. He's improving offensively every single year. Yeah. He's really involved in his game. Mm-hmm. It's just amazing to me how a guy that gives it his all on both ends of the floor, one of the best defenders, he's not afraid to take that challenge. And the fact that he's been on so many teams in his career, it's just like, me as like a Bulls fan, I would take a player like Drew Holiday every day of the week on my team.
Oh yeah. No, I would too. I mean, I'm not gonna pretend.
And me honestly too is like, if you really want me to be honest, he is a better defender than Marcus Smart. I don't care what anybody tries to tell me. On-ball defender. Drew Holiday is a better perimeter defender than Marcus Smart.
100%. And I mean, it was ironic too because in that Milwaukee and Boston series, what did Drew Holiday do? He blocked him, threw the ball off Marcus Smart.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. You can't teach that. Yeah. So it's those natural things that you just have. Yeah. So
no disrespect to Marcus Smart.
No disrespect. No. I mean, he's still he is a good defender.
Oh, really good. He's elite.
Yeah. But I would definitely say that Drew Holiday is the best defender in the NBA. You can't even pretend like that's not true. Yeah. And I think, before we wrap up here, last thing that, I want to say too, because I know that we talked mostly about the West. I think for the East, I think a couple teams that, it's going to be interesting to see this year is going to be Miami. One, because again, you were really, a Jimmy 3 away from making the finals again. Obviously losing PJ Tucker. Kyle Lowry was kind of in and out, so maybe
Tyler Hero was out.
Yes, Tyler Hero was out too. Yeah. And obviously, another team like the Bulls. The Bulls, was it a fluke? Is it for real? Are the Bulls back? Obviously Goran Dragic, Andre Drummond signings in the off season, and the impact of losing Zoe. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. How well does that team do? And I think the other team, too, that we're going to have to look out for.
We're going to talk about the Cavs.
Is the Cavs. Because that team is really good.
On paper, it's ridiculous. They could potentially have 4 All-Stars when you really look at it. I mean, Darius Garland's an All-Star. Yep. Donovan Mitchell is, I think, 2 years in a row he's been an All-Star.
Definitely he's going to be an All-Star.
Jarrett Allen's an All-Star. And Mobley's got a very bright future, and this guy's got star tandems all over him. And people forget, Karis LeVert could ball. He's a very good player too. And those guys on the floor together, I can't wait to see how that team looks. And that team's getting very, very dangerous. Depending on the potential matchups, if someone wanted to say that, dude, this team they can make a conference finals appearance.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I personally don't think that will happen, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised either.
No, I mean, it could. It really just depends because again, injuries play a factor in the game. Matchups are always something that are crucial. Cleveland is a team that defensively, they have the personnel. Jarrett Allen obviously is a great rim defender. Evan Mobley is an up and coming guy that can also play both ends of the floor. I think Isaac Okoro too.
That's another guy I didn't mention.
3-and-D guy.
Oh yeah.
I think it'll help for obviously because Darius Garland's an undersized guard. He's not going to be your best defender, and Donovan Mitchell. he can play defense, but I know that he's had a tendency to, sometimes lack on that side of the floor. So we'll see what happens. JB Bickerstaff has a great team to start this year. We'll see what happens. And I mean, honestly, Nick, I think that there's so much more that we could talk about. We could go on for days about all this stuff.
Absolutely.
I just want to say real quickly to everybody, thank you for listening to our first episode of All Ball, No Foul. We are going to make sure that we drop a new episode every week. This one's going to be a little bit longer, obviously, because it's our first one. We're going to try and keep it a little bit shorter next time. But, if you've listened to the end, we appreciate your support. Keep looking out for us. And as always, I'm Alex.
And I'm Nick.
And we are All Ball, No Foul.
All Ball, No Foul. Appreciate y'all.